Hey, welcome to another morning coffee with Trevor. I'm your host, Trevor Matthews. And once again, thank you so much for joining, taking the time to have a coffee with me and talk about some refrigeration topic as well as personal development stuff. So hope everyone's morning's going great. Yesterday, we kind of left off a little bit talking about, we got into transcritical, talking a little bit about how transcritical systems work. So CO2 refrigeration, R744. And I'd like to dive in a little bit more to talk about the different components that you really need to understand and how they work. Because if you don't understand how they work, you're gonna have a tough time understanding how a refrigeration system uses only one refrigerant to do both medium and low temp applications all at the same time. And these specific valves, one of them's called, it's a high pressure valve, but some people call it a magic valve. And really what it does, it controls your gas cooler condenser. And why do we call it a gas cooler condenser? We talked about it a few days ago. When you're above the critical point of a refrigerant, there's no pressure temperature relationship. And so at that point, when you're at a gas cooler, you're just trying to reject the heat, the amount of heat that you can, as much heat as you can, so that you can get the proper amount of refrigeration through that gas cooler or refrigerant. And when you get into what we call a flash tank receiver, then there's another valve called the flash gas bypass valve. And really, that valve controls that receiver or that flash tank, because as you're coming in, it's going to be different pressures going into there, and you need stable liquid going out to your metering device. And it doesn't matter what refrigeration system you're talking about, you always want a good quality, good stable refrigerant, subcooled refrigerant going out to your metering device. And when you have that and it's steady, then you don't have erratic valves or hunting and things like that. So the big thing is understanding how these are controlled and understanding really what they do. You know, that high pressure valve or that magic valve, it has three main functions. And it's, one of them is to control that pressure in the gas cooler condenser. So when you're in transcritical mode, you're trying to maintain a pressure. Okay. And it's important to try to keep it as steady as possible, even though you're above that critical point, that critical temperature. You're trying to make sure that you're keeping it at a steady pressure as best as possible. Now that valve, when you're in subcritical mode, you're below that critical point. Now that valve is really doing subcooling and trying to maintain a good subcooling temperature coming out. And the other thing, what a lot of people don't think about is in the winter time. So if you live in a place where it gets really cold, it's kind of like a holdback valve, so you're building that pressure up in that condenser and then making sure that you have that right quality of liquid coming out of that condenser, because when it's really cold out, your pressure drops off. So you need to build that pressure up for flow. How's everyone doing this morning? Good to see. There's quite a few that continue to come. I really appreciate that. Yeah, so it's important to understand how that valve works, because there's going to be different ones. Like all the major manufacturers now are designing these valves. You have Danfoss is probably the most popular one that I've seen out there. You have Carell, Sporlan, Emerson. There's a lot of different ones out there. And there's probably a lot more. I've actually seen a few more brands out there, but those ones are the ones that I've seen the most and heard of the most. And really, you got to do some due diligence on that. It's like any component in a refrigeration system. You need to go and invest the time to learn how it works. And electronics, I've talked about this over the last 2 weeks. We're seeing more and more and more and more of electronics. You need to understand how it works, what makes it function, what makes it tick. Because when you understand how that controller really works and all the parameters that are inside it and the function it's doing, then it's going to make your job easier to understand when you are running into an issue or a troubleshooting issue. I can't stress this enough, is getting those manuals out, working on it, getting some experience with them is going to take your troubleshooting game to the next level. And it's like any system out there. You could be talking about a chiller, you could be talking about heat pump. It doesn't matter if it's residential, commercial, industrial. You need to spend that time, and then find people that understand that technology a bit more and ask them questions. And so I had some good questions. Like some people asked me like, well, why would you use a CO2 transcritical system in a warm ambient when it's not very efficient? People say, well, that is true if you're using just a standard basic booster system, because what'll happen is when you're above that critical point, you're dumping all this hot gas and all this pressure into the receiver. You do have that magic valve or that high pressure valve reducing the pressure as much as possible, but you have unstable flash tank. So what happens is that bypass valve starts to bypass the gas to stable off that receiver. And so now when you're bypassing that gas, those compressors now are taking all of this gas, non-used gas, non-effective gas, and then recompressing it. And so you're losing 20, 30, 40% of your efficiency. So yes, if you went straight and did that and put it in a warm climate, it's not very efficient. It's going to use a lot of energy to run. But with all the new technology that's out there, you don't have to really worry about that. Pulling the temperature down, getting it down through adiabatic cooling, parallel compression, where now you're reusing that gas instead of just pumping it back into that main compressor line. You have an extra compressor, kind of like a interstage compressor, or a separate satellite compressor that is going to take that bypass gas and it's going to compress it. And now you can even reduce the size of that compressor, because you're decreasing that compression ratio. And if you look at a performance chart, you need to start looking at performance charts. You have to, because it's going to make you better as a technician, as a refrigeration professional. So I know I didn't do it before, and I didn't know there was even performance charts for compressors, to be honest with you. But when I started looking at them, and over the years, just taking a look and understanding the power, the EERs, the capacities at those different pressures and temperatures, and the amps, what the amp should be, and these are tested by the manufacturers, and all the big manufacturers do millions and millions of dollars worth of testing. I've worked for one before. They are very rigorous with their testing and their quality control and their accuracy on their their charts. Can some be off? For sure, but 99% of them, they're pretty close. They're working hard to try to pull out and bring out some of the best product out there. And so all of these big compressor manufacturers and big valve manufacturers, you see, they're working really hard to try to bring out the best product. So when you look at these performance charts, it really helps you. And it tells you like when you're inside the envelope, when you're outside the envelope. So if you set up a low pressure control and you put it outside the envelope of that compressor, you're working that compressor until it's going to start running into issues, till it fails early, because compressors should last 15, 20 years. I've seen a lot of them when I worked at Copeland come back, and they were from the 80s or 70s. So they were well maintained. The systems were serviced properly. You weren't opening the systems up a lot, and those compressors will last a long time. And it's important to get into those things maybe that you don't really do, looking at those performance charts, because it's the unknown. I've not done it before, but I highly recommend getting into using them. Look up Copeland's, look up Bitzer's, look up Carlisle's, whatever compressor you're working on, Bach, GE, doesn't matter, even if it's the larger ones. There are manuals out there for these compressors, as well as performance charts. Find them and use them. And yeah, so back to the valves, it's important to understand how they are staged too, like that high pressure valve and that bypass valve, because that controller, they're talking to each other. It's not like one's 100% open, the other one's 100% closed. Like they're modulating and they're opening and closing to try to get the best COP of the system. And depending on the conditions, if you're in transcritical mode, it's doing pressure. If you're in subcritical mode, it's doing temperature. And it's just trying to balance that out. And this is why understanding controls is going to be so important. And it's important for CO2 application, but it's really important for all the other applications out there. You're seeing this in condensing units, all these newer controls, like KE2 has a great controller out there. Corel's coming out with controllers. Emerson has a ton of controllers. Sporlan has a ton of controllers. And you really need to understand how they work. Does it take time? Yes. Is it uncomfortable to work on some of them? Yes. Are you trying to get something done right away and the customer's screaming at you and you need to get it done and the ice cream is warming up? Yes. But you need to take the time. Because if you're just trying to wing it and try to figure out and you get it up and running, you're going to be back there. Someone else is going to be back there. Take that time to learn it. Maybe you're not learning it perfectly. Learn some of it. Find a manual first, because you'll sit at a job and you won't get anything done for half an hour or an hour. If you're not even looking for the manual, you're probably going to be there stressed out a lot more. Like, what should I be doing? I don't know how this controller. You're going to get frustrated. Maybe start making a few phone calls. Hey, have you used this controller before? Have you used this controller? Most of the people are going to say no, especially on a lot of the newer electronics. They're going to be like, no, I haven't seen that yet. Some of them may have. So you need to do your job. And maybe it's that night going home and looking up and researching on your own time. This is where, if you want to become a better technician, you need to start investing your own time and learning your skills, your trade, become a better refrigeration professional. That's something that I didn't do enough of when I first started out. I didn't take the time when I got at home or during that week to learn more about different products that I was working on. I was just thinking about, okay, I've got to get this job done tomorrow. Okay, let me just chill out tonight, and then tomorrow I'll worry about it or stress about it tomorrow, and tried to do that. And it was not effective for many years. But when I started to implement, learning after work, learning, reading wire diagrams. If you're no good at, or not no good, but if you're struggling with electrical troubleshooting and you avoid it as much as possible, that's what you should be pushing toward, driving towards the things that make you feel uncomfortable, that are hard, because electrical is most of what we do as refrigeration professionals and technicians out there. We're working on the electrical. The compressor's not running because it doesn't have power. It's tripped off in its internals, or the controller's not working because it doesn't have any power. So these are the things that if you're struggling with, that's the stuff you should be practicing. And it's not like you're going to get perfect overnight. I work at it all the time, electrical, oil, all these different things, CO2, to get better. And start working at that. Take the time in the evening, learn some of this stuff. Have a book in your truck when you're having your lunch. If you're having your lunch in your truck, have something there to read or listen to a podcast to try to get you on electrical troubleshooting. There's lots of them out there. You just need to take the time to find the ones that resonate with you and that help you grow as a technician, as a professional out there. Okay, Trevor, yes, like CO2 systems that we use in the Caribbean now, we have ejectors installed on the systems. We have only small systems, 17 kilowatt low, 45 kilowatt medium, and we have good savings versus old systems. Yeah, you will. Yeah, so ejectors, you'd use probably parallel compression with that. And so that makes a huge difference. Like if all systems should have, I believe, a parallel compression on it. And, there's other new technologies like EPTA came out with flooded evaporators on it. So now you can run these coils at 0 degrees superheat because they have something kind of like a accumulator separator before it goes into the compressors. So now you can get way more efficient on that evaporator or the low pressure side, even with the even more. I mean, I think they say up to 8, 10, 12% with that. So that's a huge amount of savings. And so you need to find out the different technologies in CO2 because there's a lot of them that's going to work for your ambient, your location. Like if you're adiabatic cooling, for example, it's nothing new. That's been around forever, but it doesn't work in all locations. If you're in a location that's 100% humidity all the time, how do you pull heat out of the air, right? So how do you move that heat transfer? So these are the things that you really do need to think about and spend some time on it. I know as a technician or as a professional, we don't always have to say in what equipment we're installing, but you do over time. If you work and build a relationship with your customer, they listen to you. They trust in what you say, as long as you're bringing them value, you're honest with them, you're trustworthy, and you're trying to do the best thing to them. You're genuine and sincere with them. They're going to listen to what you say. Yes, some aren't, and I've been there, but over time I've seen me build solid relationships with the customer, and I'm the technician. We're the person that's the forefront. We're the brand of the company. It doesn't matter what company you are, you're the brand of the company, because you're out there day in, day out seeing the customers. And the contractors that know this, they are growing. Those businesses are growing because they understand we need top technicians. We need technicians who want to invest in themselves and learn the latest technologies, or want to learn customer service, want to talk to the customer and really help grow the business. Because I've seen so many time and time again that the technician has more pull than a sales or project manager with an end user. And then I've seen technicians grow businesses from building those relationships over the years. It's a very successful business. So if that's something that you want to do, that's why you should always be, bringing value to your customers. Yes, you're out there troubleshooting stuff, getting them stuff up and running, but you still need to have those conversations with them and explain in their terms, like what happened and why it happened and the things to look out for next time. It could be maintenance. Maybe they're not doing the proper amount of maintenance. You got to get into that. It doesn't matter what type of system it is. Building these relationships is going to help you grow, as well as going to really help you have more work as well in the future. Because when you say, well, we need to do this oil change, it's very important. We need to be proactive and not reactive. That's when stuff starts to happen. We need to change this compressor. This one here is the one running the hottest, and the discharge is caused, it's been in there for 12 years. It's running into issues now. We need to get that one. If we update that one, we're not going to lose it. There's a bit of blow by happening, whatever it is. And having these conversations, and all the customers, refrigeration is one of their biggest expense. It is their biggest expense, right? And you don't see it. It's hidden, so they always, they want to do, the cases so they look good. So customers are intrigued on buying stuff, and leaving the grocery store with more bags of groceries. How did they do that? But if you can think of ways that can reduce their costs, their bottom line, like adding digital compressors, variable speed, low condensing, all these different technologies and things that you could add, or CO2, depending on where you're at, that brings value to them. And they don't know a lot of this stuff. They just hear a lot of what people are trying to sell them. Different people coming in and try to sell their different technologies. But you, as a technician, that you build years and years and years of relationship building with them, you can talk to them too and show them options. You should be talking to them about this. When do you plan on doing this upgrade? In 5 years, 3 years, 10 years? And you should be having these conversations that you don't have. Maybe you do have them, but maybe you don't. And when you do that, it's going to build your growth, because a lot of the time you're not always going to be on the tools. You're going to move into a service manager role, an operation manager, project manager role, or you're going to start your own business. And so building those relationships over the years it's more important than even your technical skills, to be honest with you. Having that relationship there, because it's going to be a long-term game. Technical skills are really good as well, but you need to understand that as a professional, right? Because we're not really taught that. We're taught, you got to go out and get the stuff up and running quick and get to the next job, and you got to be better technical. But I really believe we need to work on our communication skills, how to help the customer, how to bring them value, not only value of just getting their equipment up and running, but other value. Well, if it's LED lights, or is it replacing that equipment instead of just doing a retrofit? Maybe it's going to be way more efficient. Yes, they may have to spend a little more money up front, but their payoff is in 2 years or 5 years. Like that's a massive, that's a great turnaround. If they expect that business or the total life of that system to be 20, 25 years, And at the payoffs in 5 years, that means they got 15 to 20 years of, you know, better bottom lines, you know, savings. So it's important to understand that. And getting back to CO2, understanding how those systems work, those strategies, when you talk to your customer, could be a very good value play, especially if you want to get technology like CO2 into your area, right? Because there is lots of people out there. There's both sides that CO2 is no good, CO2 is the best, and you got to find. For me, it's to find what works for you, because at the end of the day, you're serving your customers, and you got to bring them the best value. I really believe CO2 is going to continue to grow in chiller application, heat pump applications, and the supermarket game. So I actually like doing cost benefit analysis when looking for potential problem solutions. Do you want to elaborate on that, Edwin?
Oh, hello, Trevor.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, doing great. I actually like the fact that like looking for the benefit of the potential solutions, like not just retrofitting, but um, looking for probably replacing the LED. So maybe that would be the best solution for it. So anytime I'm designing, so I always look at the cost and the benefit.
Yeah.
And I do the analysis. So, and based on that, I look at the payback period as well. So based on that, I make my decisions.
Yeah, no, and that's the way you should do it. You know, you should be very clear with your customers, right, and
Mm,
very open and transparent of
mm.
what you're trying to do to try to help them, right?
Oh, yes.
Right. Like for electrical consumption is very important. We pay 34 cents. Yeah, that's very expensive for power. When you're paying that amount of power, you do not want a booster system. You know, just a standard plain booster system that you're, you know, bypassing 30% of your capacity because it's going to cost you a fortune. So having those strategies out there, Robert, parallel compression, if it's ejectors, if it's adiabatic cooling, whatever it is, to get there, mechanical subcooling. And there's lots of different ones out there that is and can be effective. Yeah, so we talked about the valves themselves. I highly recommend anyone that is working on, and I know Robert's looking into some CO2, you got to get in to find out those different components and understand those components, like I said. So if you're working on the equipment, on these Danfoss high pressure valves, go in and research a little bit. Yes, it takes work, it takes time, but it's important to do that. It's going to build you as a technician, refrigeration professional, and really you should be scheduling this in your week, you know. So you start learning stuff, and so when you come across a problem 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month down the road, you already kind of have an idea of how to tackle it. You know, I think that's super important, and that's just investing in yourself, taking time to invest in yourself to be better a little bit each day. I'm really enjoying this coffee and this mug, this Yeti mug. Once again, I got it from LabWorks International. They're a manufacturer here in southwestern Ontario, build clean rooms and a lot of different equipment. So once again, thank you to them for this fancy cup. I think I'm going to try to look into how, because they got it laser sketched out, so can't see it. Yeah, so they have it laser sketched out. So I think I'm going to look into that. Maybe try to see how that's done, because it's a nice cup. And actually, on the lid of this one here, it has a magnetic opener, so you can pull it off and clean underneath. I have had so many different coffee cups over the years, and you can't clean inside them. So it's pretty valuable. Does anybody have any questions? Anything they want to talk about or add to?
Hey, Trevor. Kind of
Hey,
a continuation. I was yesterday when the yesterday's conversation about mentoring, and I would love to maybe get into supermarket refrigeration. Like I said, most times I just do um, kitchen equipment, uh, that type of stuff. But even within my company, where I work, not my company, where I work, I've always had a hard time helping others. Um, I always tell everyone I'm not the most experienced guy, but I'm more than happy to share. And even with young guys, I tell them I'd much rather be sitting on my couch and helping you through the call than me having to go out. So I
yeah,
tell them I always tell them give my phone number, call me anytime, and I'll try to help you as long as I answer the phone. And but I just have a hard time sometimes getting them to understand that I'm not always going to have them all the answers, and that they have to do their own legwork. Some of the things you talk about constantly. I was like, you should have some books. You should have your own resources that you go to. Um, and not that I'm not willing to help, but that thing is one of the most challenging things I find sometimes trying to help others.
yeah. I feel the same way all the time. One of the things you can try is find out what they like. What do they do? Maybe they like going to the pub or something. You know what I mean? Maybe that's where the conversation needs to happen. Not just over the phone. Maybe they're like TikTok. They're on TikTok all the time. Maybe it's finding some videos on TikTok. So it's research for you. I do this all the time for my students, or it's on YouTube or it's on Instagram. So find something that they're used to and they like and they do and it's comfortable for them, because really what you're doing is getting them out of their comfort zone. You know what I mean? Because I'm learning on the job. Why do I have to take the time to learn anymore? I'll figure it out on the job. Well, then over time, it's going to lead to more stress, anxiety, and you got to see them where they're at. Find out who they are. Because a lot of the times, what I see where people do want to help, they don't really understand that person they're trying to help. And it's not super easy to do that. Like, where are they in life? Maybe they got a lot of other things, personal things going on in their life that that you can't comprehend. So is you got to find them where they're at and understand and really get them to think it's their idea, to be honest, that to do learn this stuff. And it's not always super easy, but you start with a few of them. And if it's not working with someone, maybe you got to change up your approach, because you can't change anybody. You only can change you. Right? You can try your hardest to change someone. You want them to learn, and you do all the hardest work as possible to try to help them, to change them to want to learn anymore. Unless they want to start learning themselves, it's not going to work. So you got to think about ways of them wanting to learn. What's the benefit for them? Oh, it could be making more money, could be getting a different job, it could be personal growth and development, maybe something for the family, more family time, maybe more vacation. Maybe that's how you talk to them about it. Okay, so maybe they only get 2 weeks vacation right now. Maybe, well, if you start working on this stuff, and then you show your boss, well, look at all the investment I did over the last year. Look at these different certificates I've taken, either free programs or paid programs, and this is my value. I'd like another week vacation, or I want to raise. Because at that point, their skills are growing, their knowledge is growing. They can really go and get a job somewhere else. Someone's going to come and try to recruit them. You know what I mean? Get them to think like that. So you don't have to worry about staying at this one job. Just say, and I'm not saying that somebody should leave your company or not, but they will build the value within themselves where someone's going to find them. So if that company that they're working for doesn't want to give them another week vacation, or give them a pay raise after they built their knowledge, working harder, dedicating themselves more, being there, somebody else is going to pay them more money down the road, or give them that week vacation. And so these are the
I'll tell you
things
one
that
thing I did. One thing I did is I forget how many months ago, it might be 5 months ago. I was trying to get some within our company. We have residential too. So I was trying to see if I could teach some of those guys refrigeration. And that way we only have a small number of guys doing refrigeration. So sometimes that could get pretty hectic. So I thought if I could get some of those guys doing it, it'd be easier on my schedule. And so I made like a 5-page cheat sheet, you know, compressors, condensers, evaporators, expansion valves, and refrigerants. And I don't think anyone really read it. No one definitely talked about it. No one asked me questions, you know. So I thought, I mean, it was all for nothing. What did I try to, you know, put this together for them for?
Well, it wasn't for nothing, because you're trying, and that's step one. And you got to continue to try and not give up. Just because nobody read it doesn't mean that it's not effective, you know. So don't be hard on yourself about that, because I do this all the time. I do trainings all the time. I put out content all the time, and there's people that, you know, there's trolls out there say that my stuff is terrible. Nobody comes. That has nothing to do with that. I know the value I am bringing. So you got to recognize the value that you're bringing. And maybe it's just a different platform you need to bring it. Maybe it's like you do, like Chris Stevens from HVACR videos. He started his videos by doing internal videos for his company. Maybe that's the way you got to do it. So you're out in a job site, just take a quick record. Hey guys, this is how you do the superheat, check superheat on this one, this system here, and send them the video. You know, because maybe they don't like reading or looking at pictures, or, you know, they're too busy on TikTok. Well, maybe it's you starting to make some TikTok videos for them. You know, you start an account and say, okay, here's some videos, and just send it to them. So you got to try different things, right? Because you got to find them where they're at. Okay, so we're at 7:01. Lowell said a question: what is your thoughts on the supply chain logistics nightmare at this time? Well, it's what it is. It's wild. I had a friend that's was at one of the largest food distribution warehouse here in Canada. Said the shelves are empty, and so it's crazy out there right now. And here in Canada, we have a trucking issue. Like, it's going to get a lot worse. So everyone got to prepare for logistics and stuff. I've talked to some manufacturers. They're like 8-month lead time. 8-month lead time. My system's down now. My condenser and my rack's down now. Like that's just. It's insane out there right now. So I don't know what to say about logistics. It's just crazy. And especially when you're in remote locations, it's even worse. So anyway, hopefully you all have a fantastic day. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I'll see you again tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. Eastern. My name is Trevor Matthews. Let's get a conversation going. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.